Hello, welcome. We are here with the Bright Idea program. I am Naz Özdeğirmenci. We live in an age where technology is developing at a dizzying pace and artificial intelligence touches every aspect of our lives. We are now in the midst of a transformation process that not only redefines productivity and efficiency, but also human relationships, team dynamics, and trust itself. And dear viewers, today on this program we are putting one of the least discussed yet most destructive problems in the business world on the table. If you're wondering what it is, it's human incompatibility. This is a kind of harmony that is decisive in every area, from the reasons startups fail to internal company conflicts, from investment decisions to international negotiations. And we will talk about how we can measure this harmony with artificial intelligence. And today's guest is Yusuf Baykal Bozkurt, founder and CEO of PairBright and Beonbrand AI Labs. Hello, Mr. Yusuf, welcome.
Hello, Ms. Naz. Hello to you and hello to your viewers.
Thank you very much. If you like, let's start with a brief story about yourself. Because you were actually in the world of journalism and media, and then you moved into technology and entrepreneurship. Could you tell us about it? How did you build a bridge between these two seemingly very different fields? What is your story?
Actually, I started out by doing voiceovers. When I was 13, while hosting a radio show, I realized that thousands of people were hearing my voice, and that there were people out there listening to me. And this journey led me to television journalism, and later on to hosting crime shows on various national channels. In 2015, I went to Canada for language education. And while I was at the school for language training, I received a job offer from them. I worked in the field of marketing at that school. And through various projects, I paved the way for a $1.1 billion investment and became a partner in the company. And during this partnership process, I realized that startups and entrepreneurs actually share a common problem. The problem of incompatibility. This reminded me of a crime scene. Previously, while talking about who killed whom in murders, I suddenly started to investigate the reasons that kill these projects. And the underlying reasons are actually disagreements that arise between two people. Harvard Business School says that 65% of startups fail due to disagreements between two people. In other words, good ideas are rotting away. For this reason, to prevent these ideas from decaying in the graveyard, I founded PairBright and the Beonbrand AI Lab to work on compatibility engineering so that we can figure out how to bring the right people together with the right teams, the right entrepreneurs, and the right investors at the right time. With this project, which we pivoted in 2022, I won a Fulbright scholarship at UCSD in California in the United States. I completed an approximately 6-month training and research program, and following that, we are still developing and testing the MVP of our project. What we're trying to do is to capture and show you a snapshot of how you can start entrepreneurship with compatible teams, how you can design this startup, and what you need during this adaptation process.
So basically, you're measuring human compatibility with technology, right?
Yes.
So in which areas do we see this incompatibility most often in the business world?
Incompatibility in the business world isn't limited to startups. It actually exists everywhere performance is needed. It exists in relationships as well. Today, I can actually give a very good example. Think about a marriage. Before marriage, there is a dating phase. You go to a cafe, have some cake, maybe drink some tea, go to the movies. You want to get to know each other. But in entrepreneurship, we skip over these steps. Why? Because since resources are so limited, we want to immediately start a project with the first person we meet at a networking event or with someone recommended to us through an institution or a networking platform and jump straight to the bedroom. This leads to the child being born disabled and a few months later to the child's death. Great ideas end up going to waste just like that. Investors, when they look at things, actually say 95% of the time we invest not in ideas but in people. In other words, they say people are very important to us, but they have no data in their hands. Up until now, investors have only relied on what they have at hand, what we call gut feeling, that instinct that comes from within, trusting whether someone can get the job done or not by getting to know them. Yes, that's how they invest. But now this is something that can actually be measured. Now, when we design this compatibility engineering, we can actually predict in advance, using data, whether you're headed for a honeymoon or a divorce. And we don't want to waste your time either, because the costs of this are very high. While there is a 65% failure rate, the cost of this is also $8.8 trillion per year. It has a global scale cost. And when you say you're going to start such a business, you can't actually start it. You spend between 12 and 24 months working on it. There are motivations, there are promises made. In other words, there are never-ending tasks. Actually, what we see is that the sense of taking responsibility exists here as well. Individuals who cannot take responsibility, who have not achieved personal integrity, can also fail here. What we are trying to do is, in a way, to enter the picture as a kind of third partner, to provide mentorship like a third partner, and to be a spark, an inspiration, a source of motivation so that people can harmonize with each other and produce great work together.
There are also international studies on this, right? Harvard Business School says that 65% of startups fail not because of the idea, but because of issues among the founding partners. So, to change the situation, what do you think companies, investors, or maybe even the startup ecosystem as a whole need to do differently today?
Actually, diversity is a very important thing. Diversity is always a good thing. But when you have two visionaries, two people who foresee the future in the same picture, they start to clash after a few months. To prevent these conflicts, the right teams and the right partners need to come together and work together. In other words, it's not just about having two apples, you also need diversity among the apples. And while ensuring this diversity, we actually question who you do business with. Who would walk this path with you? Who would walk this path with me? And what kind of person am I? What are my gifts? And who is the person who will complement me? When we find the answer to this, successful work emerges. Of course, there is also a part of this that happens by coincidence. There are plenty of successful businesses. There are plenty of successful entrepreneurs. There are also people who have met along the way and managed to do business together. But these are somewhat coincidental things.
Yes, so you're actually looking at the chemistry, aren't you? Of the team and the company, maybe the entrepreneur and the startup. Now, when we look at it, you measure human compatibility through behavioral artificial intelligence. Could you tell us a bit about the technological aspect? I'm asking so that our viewers can have a concrete picture in their minds. So what kind of data does this technology draw from? How is the smart chemistry score calculated?
All right. Now, actually, first we create a gamified scenario. We developed an avatar. I can show you this avatar like this. So this is someone who mimics my facial expressions, behaves like me, talks like me, has closely observed all the work I've done so far, and knows very well who I am. Because it knows me so well, when it does the matching related to me, it will bring in the most suitable candidates for me. It will present me with the most suitable candidates. I'll list a few of the areas Yusuf looks at while conducting this research in 5 steps. We call this the PAIR engine. We look at the predictive alignment response rate. So think of it like a search engine that measures the compatibility between two people, and this AI engine analyzes your personality. So in fact, instead of using fancy CVs or polished profiles to push ourselves forward or to match us with others, we're actually revealing who we truly are in our subconscious, our real existence, our goals, our intentions. Where do we want to go? What kind of job do we want to create? What is the outcome we expect from this? If we understand this well, teams that are compatible with us will come together, and a team that aligns with us will start producing without any conflict. At that point, the investor says, if I can see the chemistry score, that's a really valuable piece of data. But how do you measure this? Here we collect data in 5 different areas and across 20 different dimensions. Here we look at personality analysis. Unlike the more commonly recognized and widely utilized standard forms you know, such as the well-known Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, often abbreviated as MBTI, or the comprehensive Big 5 personality analysis forms, we also meticulously examine your distinct and individual leadership style. At the same time, we try to observe the qualities that lie in your subconscious, traits you may not even be aware of, but that you aspire to. We can do all of this just by talking. When writing, we might not reveal these details as much, but when speaking, we tend to let them slip between our words. Now, since I have a background in journalism, we once did a program called Third Page, and in this program, we mostly focused on who killed whom and how. We also looked into details like the background of the operations and why the police were conducting operations against certain people. When we look at the inquiries here, the skills we developed have now converged with artificial intelligence. Let's put it that way. And artificial intelligence conducts this inquiry as if it's profiling you like a criminal. And by drifting the same question, by asking the same question from several different angles, we catch things between the lines that even you can't articulate. With the details we catch, we create a profile of you and score these findings. There's a machine learning system working in the background. And after this peer engine creates your profile, it tells you, Ms. Naz, this is who you are. These are your areas of interest. These are the things you want to do. This is the team you need. This is the partner you need. And with this partner, you can move on to these stages. So before any problems arise, you can see who you are in advance.
You're taking an MRI of relationships.
Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking an MRI, and as a result of this analysis, we match you with the most suitable candidates and bring you together. Just like how on Tinder you swipe left or right and get a match in relationships. We could call this the Tinder of business, but on a more complex level. So it's a matching system for the business world that doesn't just rely on profile photos, but does much deeper analysis.
Yeah, that's what confuses me. Human relationships are really complicated, you know, and so are emotional areas. So how does an artificial intelligence mathematically analyze human nature? I mean, how reliable can something like this really be?
Actually, there are a lot of theories in philosophy, sociology, and psychology. And these theories are used in personality analyses, in determining how people are positioned, what kind of profile they have, and have become part of academic education at universities from past to present. One of these is the John Jane model, for example. So when we analyze you, we make use of these theories. It's not just based on my own opinion. But of course, these theories alone are not sufficient. And for about 2.5 years, together with nearly 400 of my colleagues, 180 of whom provided visual data, I have collected a lot of data. And among this data, in fact, founders, entrepreneurs, and investors heard certain questions from me. And I asked them those questions repeatedly in different versions. And we trained the model with these questions. You can think of these questions like this. Now, we actually want something, but sometimes there are things we don't want. It's very difficult for us to express what we don't want because our brain positions us in such a way in survival mode that it doesn't want us to get hurt or to feel sad. It doesn't want us to suffer. That's why some things always remain hidden inside. People who are able to turn inward are the ones who can find peace in their lives. Nothing in life is really that mechanical. Within this non-mechanical life, when we become part of something that allows us to look inside, to turn inward, we get the chance to observe, and we develop an observing consciousness. In fact, let's call this a consciousness that observes the observing consciousness. Because when we make certain decisions, we always do so with a particular intention, but we don't really know the reasons, purposes, or causes underlying that intention. There's also a bit of a biological aspect to this. I can mention it very briefly because human life actually consists of 7-year cycles. When we look at the ages from 0 to 7, as soon as we are born from our mother's womb, we enter a period of emotional growth. That is, a time when we develop our emotional intelligence. Until the age of 7, we have no memory at all, but we do have emotions. We feel everything, and we respond to everything with our feelings. We cry when we're hungry. We cry when we soil ourselves. Our reactions are always emotional responses. And after developing this emotional communication here, when we turn 7, we start school. It's the same everywhere in the world. Between the ages of 7 and 14, we receive all of our basic education because our memory starts to develop. On this journey that continues until the age of 14, the period up to 21 is when we enter adolescence. In other words, physical growth begins. So all of these start in 7-year periods. Now, why did I give this example? Because when I started this project, actually, not everything was all sunshine and roses. At first, I developed an app called Cortex-89, which would provide coaching training for mothers and fathers. My goal with this app was to offer guidance to individuals, children, mothers, and fathers. Why? Because in the past, not much data may have been shared with these mothers and fathers about being a parent. Because back then, they were children of war. They learned survival skills from their mothers and fathers. They learned how to survive.
Baby boomers.
Yes. There's a huge difference between learning how to survive and developing emotional intelligence. There are fears, worries, anxieties. That's why, when I look back, the challenges I faced while developing this project led me to design and create PairBright. Because I realized in the relationships I built that incompatible teams cost me time. I couldn't launch Cortex-89, but I learned a lot from Cortex-89. What happened? So how do I solve the problem of incompatible teams? What are my problems? Is this a common problem among entrepreneurs? Is this just my problem, or is it something everyone faces? These are the questions I was able to ask.
Yes, you just explained such wonderful things, but when people hear artificial intelligence, they usually think of something cold and mechanical. But at PairBright, you are addressing human needs. So what did you say? Trust, being understood, adapting. Even though it may seem like a contradiction here, you actually explained that you are also building a connection. So, in your opinion, how could the concept of harmony engineering create a transformation on a societal scale?
Now, if there is harmony, companies get funded much faster. Harmonious companies do much better work because harmonious teams produce without conflict, without wasting their energy. Even here in this studio, a team that lacks harmony can't work together, can't communicate, can't share anything. Harmony is very important everywhere. Even when you go on air, you want your editors, the people in the control room, the ones doing the editing, everyone, to work in harmony. Because if there is no harmony and something else happens on air while we're talking here, it would bother you. So we see that, in fact, harmony is at the foundation of everything. And one of the greatest needs of the 21st century is harmony engineering. Companies that can design this, adapt to it, and make it a part of their team are the ones that succeed. Actually, this has already been practiced up until now. When you look at it, large companies have spent millions of lira for years on various human resources professors to position the right people under the right leaders in terms of harmony. They spend millions of dollars as well. There are examples of this in Turkey too, because you might be a good CEO, but you could be a cold CEO. But you come from a finance background, and this financial background, this structure of yours, might not be compatible with your creative team. If a CEO with this kind of background joins your team without anyone realizing it, without understanding these characteristics, we start to see resignations in the team after a few months. After 6 months, we see that this team has fallen apart. Then we see that this company has gone bankrupt. So it's actually that important. We shouldn't look at this only from the perspective of companies. There are many areas where harmony is applied. Harmony is also very important in the field of diplomacy. Again, harmony is very important in the field of healthcare. And once more, harmony is very important in the field of education as well. If we want to give examples from the field of education, when students who start university or school develop projects with friends they are compatible with, they make progress instead of clashing, and they gain experience before entering the business world. But if they end up in incompatible teams, then regrets begin. Hatred towards school and life starts to set in. A kind of cooling off begins. Attitudes towards the teacher change. The student-teacher relationship is not properly established. So what we're trying to say is that harmony is a part of our lives in everything. It's just that sometimes we haven't named it or labeled it as such. But even in our relationships, we look for a companion who is compatible with us. We want to choose a spouse who is compatible as well. Or we want to work in a place where there is harmony. Again, we want to form friendships with people who are compatible. We want to go on vacation. In fact, they say before you go on vacation, if you want to really know a friend, go on a trip together. Why? Because that's where the masks come off. These are very important pieces of data. Now, with artificial intelligence and engineering, these data can be gathered from us. And we might not be able to do this individually with everyone. Because in terms of numbers, we simply don't have that chance. Just think about it. A single investor listens to hundreds of projects today. Among these projects, dozens of CVs come in, dozens of pitches, dozens of decks. They say, well, I developed this, I developed that. And what the investor is actually looking at is whether this business will make money, because the investor has a goal. They ask, how much can I earn from this? Because I'm going to invest my money, so how will I get a return? But 90% of these people can't even reach this stage. Do you know why they can't reach it? Because the investor doesn't have time. I mean, they don't have time to listen to everyone. What we're trying to do is connect the right person with the right person. Now, my project is at the pre-seed stage, just before the seed stage, and very close to it. Now, at this stage, I'm also meeting with venture capitalists, because I know that they will become my users at some point. I know they will be involved in this project. That's why I want to pitch to them as well and get feedback from them too. But when I pitch to them, when I present my project to them, when I go into a presentation, my observation is this: I can't meet their expectations. If other entrepreneur friends also, right at the idea stage, in the concept phase, or when the idea is a bit more developed, a prototype has been created, something has taken shape, and they reach a stage where they can present something and then go in front of a venture and say, I'm ready, invest in me, it probably won't attract much interest. It's a waste of time, a loss of motivation, because the right person hasn't met the right person. Who? It's mostly angel investors who are interested in this. How are we going to reach angel investors? Right now, there isn't such a platform. The platforms that do exist only list you. In other words, they just say, this person exists, this person exists, this person exists. Everything is in your hands. You have to write, call, hustle, run around so you can find money. And without finding money, you can't develop the product. Now, all of these bring us back to the classic chicken or the egg question. Creating a barrier that blocks entrepreneurship puts an obstacle in front of entrepreneurs, and it's not just my problem. It's the same in San Francisco. It's the same in Toronto. It's the same in Istanbul. It's the same in Dubai. The problem is always the same problem. I mean,
compatibility?
Yes, if there's compatibility, if the right person meets the right team in the right place, these issues get resolved.
Maybe even a compatibility assessment could be done between countries, right?
Of course.
If it's being done between investors and startups, why not between countries?
Absolutely. The diplomatic aspect is already very strong.
Yes.
For example, we're developing a product. Who needs this product? Who is it for? We can even identify that. Because the relationship here isn't just about personality analysis. The relationships you build there are also part of this connection. And then, for example, we have ministers, we have members of parliament, we have executives. In diplomacy, we have diplomats who serve in the public sector and carry out these duties. For example, how are our diplomats selected and how is it decided which country they will be assigned to? Which teams work under them? It's very important. If a diplomat cannot choose the teams working under them or cannot reach teams that will be compatible with them, it becomes very difficult to achieve anything in that country. It's really difficult to establish those relationships. That's why, well, we can see the importance of harmony everywhere.
So, in such a forward-looking field, what do you think Turkey can do? I mean, can local startups take the lead in this area? What do you think?
Of course. Now think of it this way. Right now, it's very difficult for an entrepreneur in Turkey to compete with a startup in America because there are limited resources, limited opportunities in our country. Unfortunately, entrepreneurship is still not given much importance. It is not a place where much investment is made. It is not an area that is encouraged. Because I came and saw that ITU Core is doing very successful work here with its own teams. For example, over there, they are producing very successful work, but they can still only do it with limited resources. These opportunities should be expanded even further. Their scope should be broadened. And for instance, universities with a high brand value like Boğaziçi University and ITU can produce very serious startups, develop significant products, and solve many problems. But if they are supported, if they are funded, the government needs to pave the way for these entrepreneurs in this field. It needs to provide support so that value can be added. In America and Canada, these kinds of initiatives receive a lot of support. Now, from Turkey's perspective, if these two brothers, my friends here, my entrepreneur friends, have developed a project, we will be able to present them to an investor in America. Why? Because we have a platform and we claim that we know these two guys. We say this is this person's chemistry score, this is the product they've developed, and this is their emotional drift. These are also the stages of the product. In other words, the investor has a dashboard and can see everything in front of them. In fact, we even provide the investor with this. We've connected it to a large language model via API. It says, explain this person's product to me. So now the entrepreneur doesn't even need to come and make a presentation to the investor. The investor can get information about a project they're interested in by talking to AI as a third partner with support from artificial intelligence. He says whether he believes in the project or not, and then decides not to invest.
Okay, Mr. Yusuf, let me take it briefly from you. So what is Turkey's place in PairBright's global vision?
I think compatibility engineering is a very nice term. If Turkey attaches importance to compliance engineering and brings compliance engineering to the forefront in its own projects, its own products, and its own initiatives, it will attract a lot of attention in the global market.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a very nice, different program, frankly. Dear viewers, Yusuf Baykal Bozkurt, founder and CEO of PairBright and Beonbrand AI Lab, was with us. We are wrapping up Parlak Fikir. We have a short break. We'll be together again after the break.